What's the worst thing you have ever done? Throwaway here because I am a terrible person. I grew up very poor with dysfunctional parents in a rural area. My siblings and I often went hungry. As the oldest, I always tried to look after them. But one day I failed hard. When I was 7 and my little brother was 5, I was playing outside and he appeared with a bologna sandwich that he had somehow scraped together from what he could find in the kitchen. It was just a single piece of meat on 2 squished pieces of dried bread. No cheese, no condiments, nothing else. When I saw what he had, in a fit of jealousy, I knocked it out of his little fingers onto the ground. He immediately burst into tears and started bending down to pick it up off the ground. Before he could pick it up out of the dirt, the local pack of stereotypical dogs that a poor rural family keeps pushed him over and ate the sandwich. He just lay there on the ground, covered in dust, crying and repeating over and over, "I made it to share with you. I am now 30, and we have a close relationship, but not a day goes by that I don't think about what I did on that one day out of petty jealousy. I want to apologize, but I really am hoping that he does not, or will not remember it." This actually made me shed a tear. It speaks volumes about you that you still think about this and feel bad. You should apologize. You will feel better, even if he really doesn't remember. When we were 10, my best friend and I were always bullied by this kid who lived in our complex. He was one of those sneak bullies too, who acted so lovely around adults but was a holy terror when they weren't around. So one day after he held my friend down and made him eat dog crap, we hatched a plan to put him out of commission. We found a Windex bottle and filled it with a bunch of different cleaning agents, one of them being bleach. Then we went looking for him. When we found him, he asked my friend if he was still hungry and wanted some more, and when he came over to us I squirted him right in the face with the bottle. A good few squeezes worth. He ended up going to the hospital with chemical burns and lost all of the sight in one eye and partial sight in the other. He Facebooked me a few years back and apologized for how he had treated us and actually thanked me for what we did to him. He said it was a real eye-opener, his pun, not mine, and he now works exclusively with blind children and says it's incredibly rewarding. Whoa, that's pretty bittersweet. I'm a big guy, 6 feet 2, 280 pounds, bearded. I was walking through the mall one day and went to hitch up my pants. I chose to do that. However, at the exact time that a small Hispanic woman was walking by with her baby in her arms, I accidentally elbowed that baby right in the face. The woman, very timidly, said "Lo siento" and ran off in the opposite direction. Inadvertent baby abuse stories were an unexpected surprise in this thread. I was walking downtown one night after leaving the bar, around midnight-ish, and I had to walk a few blocks to my car. Parking is awful in the city on a Friday night. Well, halfway there when there wasn't anyone around, someone comes up behind me, taps me on the shoulder and tells me to give him my wallet, or it will be bad, as he had his hand deep in his pocket. I don't know if he had a gun on him, but all I could think about was getting stabbed or shot, which I really didn't want to go through. So I preempted him, reached for my wallet and grabbed my knife, put my hand in his face and stabbed him in the stomach 3 times and ran as hard as I could for probably a mile. Never told anyone, never called the cops, as it seemed like that would put me in a worse spot. No idea what happened to him. My half-sister, who lived with her father in another state, died of a brain tumor when I was 17 and she was 15. The tumor pressed on her vocal cords, causing her voice to be very high-pitched and breathy. For the last 6 months of her life, I refused to speak with her on the phone because her voice reminded me of her. At the time, untreatable cancer and, at the time, inevitable death. This was in 1987 and I still hate myself for it. Was in 3rd or 4th grade. Kid a grade younger than me was picking on me. Was a daily occurrence. Everyone on bus hated him. Finally one day I screamed at him, "Well, at least I have a mom." His mother had passed away allegedly from AIDS a year or 2 before. He cried a lot and ended up transferring schools. I feel bad about it to this day. This exchange happened in grade 9 between a kid with a fat mom and a kid with a mom who died a few years earlier. "Greg, your mom is so fat, she jumped in the air and got stuck." "Tyler, your mom is so dead, she'll never see you grow up." "Yeah, it got fricked after that." At laser tag I accidentally knocked down a little girl when we collided while rounding a corner. Instead of helping her up, I shot her for the points and ran away. It's laser tag. She knew what she was getting into. I was 11 years old, asked my grandma who was raising me to buy me an Oreo McFlurry from Dairy Queen while she was running errands. She didn't want to because it was out of her way. I persisted and she continued to say no. 2 hours later she came back and stopped her car at the end of the driveway and paused for a while, like she was going to back up and do more errands. I came out to see what was up and she rolled the window down and handed me an Oreo McFlurry with the biggest smile on her face. I took it and threw it down on the lawn because I was a hyper prick and was peeved that she said no earlier. I remember her smile going to a WTF face after I threw it. She died of cancer a year later. I am 24 now and to this day that is my saddest memory ever. She chose to raise me after she had already brought up her own kids and was the best person ever. I am so sad this is the first thing that come to mind when I think about her. Peas. I am a piece of crap. I miss you mamam. Sorry. Damn that's bad. Coming from someone who really loves his grandma, it hurt me to read this. I hope beyond this specific memory, you guys both know you loved each other. Living and abroad in Australia, I had sex with my German co-worker who had a boyfriend. She was in the country for 3 years on a domestic partnership visa and only had to stay for 6 more months to get full permanent residency. When her boyfriend found out he broke up with her and alerted immigration, he was her visa sponsor. She was deported back to Germany. I was walking a big city in an area unfamiliar to me an evening this summer, a few hours before sundown. It was in a residential area. About a 20-minute walk from the city center. There wasn't a whole lot of people on the street and only a little bit of traffic. Now, onto the actual event. As I walk, a car drives by me and turns in on a street I just passed. The car is going faster than is safe, and I hear a young woman screaming something from the half-open passenger door. I think crazy buttholes to myself and keep walking, as did everyone else who was out. It was only later that night when I thought back on it that I realized something. The woman had screamed help. I was mortified. The fact that neither I nor anyone else on the street did a single thing to help her made me feel sick. As far as I know, no one checked up on the situation. No one called the cops. No one did anything. The worst thing is I have no idea what happened to the girl. She could have been victim of a kidnapping for all I know. Frick. I was climbing a tree with my friend when we were in first grade. I was the better tree climber as he was sort of a inside all the time kind of kid. For some reason I thought it would be awesome to pee from the top of the tree. While peeing I thought it would be awesome to pee on him. So I did. Just a few months ago I went on a road trip with the wife and kids. On the way back my son made us take an emergency potty break. When I got out to get him out of the car I found a wallet on the ground. I picked it up, got back in the car and opened it up. Has several credit cards, SS card, bank card, DL, $879 and several other items. Looked the guy up on FB and sent him a friend request with a message saying I found his wallet. Fast forward about 2 weeks. Don't hear from him. Contact his relatives. They have him call me. Guy wants me to bring it to him. A 1-2 hour ride away. I tell him it's not possible. I'm too busy. He says that's fricked up bro. I say sorry, but I can meet you halfway this weekend. Guy says cool. He then tells me he doesn't remember how or when he lost it because he was freaking hammered. Fast forward to the weekend. I arrive at the location he decided on and wait for him for over 30 minutes. He finally calls and says my bad bro. I was at the bar with my friends and forgot about you. I'll be there in about 10 minutes. 45 minutes later he shows up. Walk up to me and says 1 sec bro. I gotta pee. He is obviously intoxicated. Makes me wait while he goes in to pee. For some reason my inner voice said frick this guy. So I took the money out of the wallet. Just seconds later he walks up and I hand him his wallet. He says thanks, snatches it from my hand and leaves. And I don't feel bad at all. Not one bit. I wouldn't kill the person I loved. She was a day from the end of her life. Cancer had eaten her liver. She went yellow. Her liver couldn't filter out water anymore so her lower half was swelling up. This meant she couldn't move her legs. She used to be a ballet dancer. She had a Hickman line, a tube that connects to an artery in the chest. It's used for putting chemotherapy into the bloodstream. She decided to cut through the tube so that she would bleed to death. She did that, looked at me and said, "Why isn't it working?" It failed because of blood pressure. If she was lying down it would have worked. I closed up the end of the tube. I knew she was dying. I knew she going to suffer another day, but I wouldn't let her die. I even thought you'd be better off dead and I was too selfish to let go. She was always brave, and she chose to die on her terms. But I'm coward and I made her suffer because I'm weak. This meant she couldn't move her legs. She used to be a ballet dancer. That really hurt to read. I let a man die that I could have saved. Next time someone tells you they're going to kill themselves, consider discreetly getting them help by any means. A friend of mine was babysitting his neighbor's baby when he was 14 or 15. For some reason the baby was on the floor and the door rang. He jumped up to get it and didn't look where he was stepping and stepped, practically jumping on the baby's head. It didn't cry or anything. Fast forward years later, the child is developmentally challenged. In his defense, they also have a daughter who is older who also has a learning disability. And no, this incident was never revealed to the parents. Oh man, this one gave me the shudders. I banged my ex-GF of 3 years. We had been broken up for 3 years at this point too. For around 6 months while she was engaged. She needed to make sure she didn't love me anymore and my penis was in control. 5/10 wouldn't engage in adultery again. Around 6 months. Needed to make sure she didn't love me anymore. That's a long testing phase. You should get her to work for a games developer. I was at Dave & Buster's heading back to my friends with a huge mug of beer in my hands. An oblivious little girl runs right towards me. Her head equal level to my mug. I barely avoid her spilling a good splash of beer in the process. I yell, "Hey," and turn around to further chastise the little girl. She looks back at me and trips. Falling, then wham, the little girl that was chasing the first girl runs smack into my mug. The whole freaking thing empties on her head. 2 little girls are on the floor crying hysterically, one drenched in beer. Their parents were then in a flash. The first thing that came out of my mouth is, "You guys owe me a new beer." Frick places that mix a bar scene with Chuck E. Cheese. When I was 6 years old, my buddy and I decided to put a boulder on a seesaw and see if we can make it catapult. We were 6 years old, damn it. I was a weak kid and couldn't get a proper grip on it. I accidentally dropped it and my friend's hands got caught underneath the boulder on cement ground. He started screaming and I got so scared I just ran away. He stayed like that for a few hours. Plot: a new movie, 1.27 hours starring a kid. Okay, here we go. This still torments me to this day. When I was 13 years old, my parents took me to buy a hunting slingshot. I also bought a bunch of large metal ball bearings to shoot. My parents kept the real ammo and told me I wasn't allowed to play with the slingshot when they weren't home. So 15 minutes after we got home they both left for a few hours. My brother and his friend and I immediately went and took the slingshot out of their room but couldn't find the ammo. Our house was built on an old hazelnut farm, so there are hazelnut trees around the entire property and a lot of squirrels. So we started picking up the nuts that the squirrels dropped out of the trees and started shooting things in the yard. Then, sure enough, this squirrel came down on a really low branch while my brother's friend had a nut ready to shoot. We hadn't been able to hit a single target the entire time we were outside. We sucked. So as a joke, I told my brother's friend to shoot at the squirrel that was 10 feet away. He pulled back and shot the squirrel right in the side of the head. It fell out of the tree and was paralyzed on the left side of its body, but it was kicking with the 2 feet on the right side and was spinning in a circle making these horrible shrieking noises. There were blood bubbles exploding out of its nose, mouth, and eyeball all at the same time. It was screaming this shrilling bloody murder noise and it was my fault that it was writhing in horrendous pain. I swear to God I could feel the pain it was experiencing. I thought quick and realized that I had to put it out of its misery, so I grabbed a big branch off the ground and started hitting the squirrel as hard as I possibly could. It wouldn't die. I was smashing the crap out of that little critter and it took at least 8-10 hits to finally kill it. Once it was dead I dug a hole and buried the little guy and apologized to it over and over, petting it and telling it I was so sorry. I am 31 years old now and after almost 20 years, I still get sick to my stomach every time I think about that. Frick, I suck. I created a fake username on Reddit and did an AMA posing as a celebrity, and as proof sent the mods a photoshopped picture, which they never questioned. If it was Obama or Psy, you deserve an upvote or two. When me and my wife first started talking some years back, there was this guy that really liked her as well and had for much longer than I had known her. Fast forward a few weeks and we became a bit closer and he just wouldn't give it up. I told him over and over to just drop it since we were decent friends at the time and could be light about it. Of course he didn't, so it became more personal and negative to the point where we almost fought a few times from him running his mouth a little too much. Now is the time to preface this with a small backstory. He had previously fathered a child with a girl, and on a trip to a neighboring town one afternoon they were in a car accident and killed. He was destroyed by it. Fast forward to when he was at stalker level with my wife. I finally sort of snapped and got a hold of him and told him that there was really no point in living anymore and it seemed to be about time for him to go be with the only people that would ever love him by offing himself. At the time it worked wonders in getting him to literally drop all contact with her and he eventually left town. He, some time later, found another lady friend and they are married and with children, so he ended up okay. I felt no remorse at the time, but now I can understand that it was probably one of the most fricked up things I could and will ever say. You might seem like an butthole, but in all honesty, what you did there might actually have been the reason he pulled himself together. You have been visited by the wisdom pupper type. Study well, pupper, or you will fail your next text at school. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.